Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to cut through the noise and get straight to the essentials. And today we're diving headfirst into something that, well, it touches all of our lives, really, whether we notice it or not. Negotiation skills. We've been digging into a really great source for this one, Negotiation Skills by Animesh.pdf. Our mission, as always, is to pull out the key insights, maybe some surprising bits, and definitely the practical stuff you can use. Because, let's be real, negotiation isn't just for big business deals. It's a fundamental life skill. It happens all the time.
That's so true. It's kind of amazing when you start looking for it, just how universal negotiation actually is, from the formal things like contracts or asking for a raise, right down to deciding where to go for dinner with friends or planning a family trip. Understanding the basics, the fundamentals, it can genuinely transform how those interactions go, make them, well, more positive. It's really more than just getting your way. It's about finding better solutions together.
Okay, so it's clearly important stuff. But where do we start? Let's unpack it right from the definition. Our source defines negotiation as basically a process. Two or more people talking, discussing, to try and reach an agreement they can both live with. It's this mix of communications, bit of persuasion, solving problems, all aimed at getting interests aligned and, sorting out differences. Sounds simple, but there's a lot packed in there, isn't there?
Precisely. And when you break it down, the core elements are pretty consistent. Whatever the situation, you've absolutely got to have at least two sides. And crucially, they need to have different interests or at least different priorities on something. Each side brings their own goals, their own objectives to the table. Then there's the communication part. It's a structured chat, really, where you share needs, concerns, make offers, which leads almost inevitably to bargaining, maybe some compromise. Give and take, concessions happen, and the end goal, an agreement, ideally one that works for both, and maybe even creates some extra value that wasn't there to begin with.
Right. So connecting that back to you, the listener, what does this mean for your life, your career? This is where it gets really practical because the source makes it clear. Strong negotiation skills are vital, absolutely vital. Think about it, sales, buying things for a company, leadership roles, managing teams, even just smoothing over conflicts at work. Being good at negotiation, it doesn't just help your company, it can really boost your whole career path.
And that brings up a really interesting point. How often are we actually negotiating without even labeling it that way? The impact goes way beyond just work. Good negotiation builds stronger relationships, truly. Because aiming for those win-win outcomes, that builds trust. It fosters partnership. It also sharpens your decision-making. You start thinking more strategically. In business, it directly links to maximizing value, better deals, more profits, smarter spending. And maybe most importantly, it develops your problem-solving skills. You learn to get creative when you hit a roadblock instead of just, stopping.
Okay, so we know what it is, why it matters. A lot. Now, let's get into the how. Let's equip you with the core principles. We're going to walk through the fundamentals that successful negotiators use time and again to get good results.
All right, first principle, and honestly, it's the bedrock. Preparation is key. This isn't just knowing a few facts. It means really digging into the other side's needs, their goals, what limits them. And what's really powerful here is defining your BATNA that's your best alternative to a negotiated agreement. Your fallback plan. Just having a strong BATNA, knowing what you'll do if talks fail, gives you incredible confidence, even if you never mention it. Some studies actually show that negotiators with a clear plan B, they often get 15-20% better outcomes just from that confidence. And beyond BATNA, you need clear goals for yourself and absolutely know your walkaway point. That knowledge, that's your real leverage.
That's such a vital point, especially the confidence part. Okay, once you're prepared, the next principle is, well, it's a bit of a mind shift. Focus on interests, not positions. What this means is digging deeper than just the stated demands, like I want X. You need to understand the why, the underlying motivations, the concerns for both sides. It's moving from what I want to why I want it, and crucially, why do they want what they want? Understanding that why opens doors. It helps you find common ground and creative solutions you wouldn't see otherwise. It fosters collaboration.
Exactly. And focusing on why kind of naturally leads into the next big thing, adopting a win-win mindset. The really good negotiators, they're always looking for solutions where both parties feel like they've gained something valuable. It's about actively avoiding that old zero-sum thinking, where my win has to be your loss. It means being open to creative ideas that actually make the pie bigger for everyone. It's like instead of fighting over slices, you bake a whole new cake together.
Love that analogy. And of course, none of this works without effective communication. And this is huge. It's not just talking well. It's maybe even more about active listening. Really paying attention, asking clarifying questions, acknowledging their point of view even if you disagree. Use clear language, avoid confusing jargon, and maybe hardest of all, manage your emotions. Steer clear of getting aggressive or defensive. That just shuts things down.
hmm And building on clear communication, you absolutely have to work to build trust in relationships. This means being credible, showing integrity, acting consistently. Showing empathy and respect really helps create a cooperative feel. And, crucially, avoid manipulative tactics. Seriously, they might seem smart short-term, but they wreck trust and damage long-term relationships. And those relationships, often worth way more than one single deal.
Right. Then, when you get into the actual back and forth, the bargaining, think about strategic concessions. Don't just give things up because you feel pushed or want it to be over. Make concessions with a purpose. Try to trade something that's less important to you for something that's more important to you. And be careful not to make unnecessary compromises that just weaken your position without getting something valuable back.
It's also super important to manage power dynamics. You need to recognize where the leverage really is in a negotiation. It's not always obvious. Use whatever leverage you have wisely. And even if you feel like you have less formal power, maybe less authority or resources, stay confident. Be assertive. Remember, power isn't just position or money. It comes from good preparation, having specific knowledge, the strength of the relationship you've built, or even just how strong they think your BATNA is.
That leads nicely into another key skill, one that really marks out the great negotiators: adaptability and problem solving. Things almost never go exactly to plan, right? So you have to be flexible. You need to be open to different ways of getting things done. You've got to think creatively to get past sticking points and be ready to adjust your strategy based on what the other side does or says, or if new information comes up.
And this one's subtle, but really effective. Control the process, not just the outcome. What does that mean? Well, it's about guiding the meeting itself. Maybe setting the agenda, keeping the discussion on track, managing time effectively. Don't let things get rushed unnecessarily, but don't let them drag on forever either. Keep the focus on finding solutions, not just, arguing or getting stuck on one tiny point.
Okay, and finally, after all that effort, you need to close with clarity. This is critical. Sum up everything that's been agreed. Make sure everyone understands it the same way. Get all the terms clearly defined, and, really importantly, get it documented. Avoid any fuzzy areas later. And don't just stop there. Follow up afterwards. Reinforce the agreement and keep nurturing that relationship you worked hard to build.
As you start thinking about negotiation like this, you quickly bump into some common ideas, maybe bad habits that actually get in the way. So let's spend some time debunking a few of those common myths.
Okay, first one up. Myth 1. Negotiation is about winning or losing, like it's some kind of battle. The reality, the best negotiators, they really don't see it that way. They aim for win-win. They want both sides to feel good about the outcome. That's absolutely key for any kind of long-term relationship. It's about mutual gain, not a fight. Then there's myth 2. The best negotiators are naturally charismatic, smooth talkers. Well, confidence helps, sure, but negotiation is fundamentally a learned skill. It's about prep, strategic thinking, listening well. Anyone, really anyone, can get much better with practice and learning the techniques. It's not about being born charming. It's about being prepared and present.
Let's tackle myth 3. Negotiators must be aggressive to succeed. That you have to be tough, maybe even a bit intimidating, actually being overly aggressive. That often backfires. It damages trust, shuts down communication, leads to worse outcomes. Assertiveness, being clear about your needs, combined with collaboration. That's far more effective than just being confrontational. It's firm but fair, not forceful.
A really common one, and one people worry about, is myth 4. The party with more power always wins. The fascinating thing here is that power in negotiation isn't always obvious. It often comes from preparation, from knowing your stuff, from being creative. It's not just about having more money or a bigger title. A well-prepared negotiator, someone with a solid BATNA, they can influence outcomes much more than you might think, even against a seemingly stronger party.
And this next one might actually surprise you. Myth 5. Talking more means negotiating better. The truth is often the complete opposite. The most effective negotiators, they tend to listen more than they talk. They listen really carefully to understand the other side, their needs, their worries, what's really driving them. Then they tailor their approach. Your ears are probably your best negotiation tool.
What about myth 6? You should never make the first offer. We hear that a lot. But actually, research shows that making the first offer, it's called anchoring, can often work in your favor. It can set the tone, influence the final number. The key, though, is that your first offer has to be reasonable, based on good information, not just plucked out of thin air. Pro tip, though,
Hmm.
know when not to anchor.
Mhm.
Like if you really don't have enough information about their situation yet.
Yeah, good point. And a related pitfall, myth 7. Always aim for the lowest price or biggest concession, just focusing relentlessly on the bottom line. The danger there is you completely miss other important things, maybe better service, long-term support, added features, relationship value. Negotiation is about the total value you create and capture, not just minimizing the initial cost. Sometimes paying a bit more for a lot more overall value is actually a smarter deal.
Then there's myth 8. Silence means weakness. That awkward pause. People rush to fill it. Not at all. Silence can actually be a really powerful tactic. Gives you breathing room to think. Can make the other person uncomfortable enough to talk more, maybe reveal something useful. And it can definitely create strategic pressure. Think of it as a thinking pause, not weakness.
And this is important. Myth 9. Emotions should be completely avoided in negotiations. Be cold, be robotic. Well, uncontrolled outbursts, yeah, those are bad. They derail things. But emotional intelligence, that's crucial. Things like empathy, showing confidence, even expressing emotions in a controlled way can actually build rapport, strengthen trust, and help you get better outcomes. It's about managing emotions, not suppressing them entirely.
Right. And finally, a big one, myth 10. A deal must always be reached. Feeling like you failed if you walk away. The reality check here is, sometimes the smartest move is to walk away. If the terms just aren't right for you, if the deal doesn't make sense. Remember that BAT&A we talked about, your best alternative. Having a strong one gives you the confidence to say no to bad deals. Protecting your interests is more important than just getting any deal done. Okay, so we've covered the what, the why, the how-to principles, and importantly, what not to do, the myths. Now let's zoom out a bit and look at the two main categories or styles of negotiation, distributive and integrative. Understanding the difference helps you pick the right approach for the right situation. That's a skill in itself.
Yeah, absolutely. And often when people picture negotiation, they're thinking of distributive negotiation. It's often called win-lose or zero-sum. Think of it literally like dividing a fixed pie. There's a set amount of something money, maybe a specific item, and whatever one side gains, the other side kind of has to lose, the main characteristics. Well, it's that fixed pie mentality. It tends to be competitive, with each side trying to grab the biggest slice for themselves. It can feel a bit adversarial sometimes. There's usually a lot of focus on positions, I need this price, rather than the underlying reasons why. Classic examples are everywhere, really. Buying a used car, buyer wants the lowest price, seller wants the highest, salary negotiation focusing just on the number, or trying to get the absolute rock bottom price from a supplier for a standard product. Common tactics you see here, things like anchoring with a bold first offer, maybe highballing or lowballing to set an extreme starting point, threatening to walk away, using silence or deadlines to create pressure.
Right, that sounds familiar. Now, in stark contrast to that, you have integrative negotiation. This is the win-win approach, sometimes called value creating. Here, the whole game is different. The focus isn't just dividing what's there, it's about actively trying to expand the pie to create more value for everyone involved. Its main features. A strong focus on those underlying interests we talked about, not just the surface positions. The goal is to create value for both parties through collaboration and problem solving. This approach naturally encourages building long-term relationships based on trust. It often involves multiple issues, not just one sticking point like price, which allows for trade-offs. And it really requires open communication and creativity. Think about examples like two businesses forming a joint venture. They combine strengths to create something bigger than either could alone, or employment contracts that go beyond just salary, discussing benefits, flexible working, training, career path. That's integrative. Even resolving a customer complaint effectively may be offering a discount, plus better service terms or loyalty points. That builds future goodwill. It's not just a simple refund. Common strategies here. Active listening is huge. Brainstorming ways to expand the pie. Making trade-offs, sometimes called log rolling, where you concede on an issue that's less important to you but more important to them in exchange for something you value more. And just generally, mutual problem solving.
If you put them side by side, the key differences really stand out, don't they? The mindset, win-lose versus win-win. The focus, positions versus interests. Strategy, competitive versus collaborative. Relationship impact. Often short-term or transactional for distributive, but focused on long-term and trust for integrative. Communication style. Often guarded and strategic and distributive, but much more open and cooperative and integrative. And the outcome reflects that. One side usually benefits more in distributive, whereas ideally both sides gain significant value in integrative. It's also worth saying many real-world negotiations aren't purely one or the other. They can kind of blend both. You might negotiate distributively on the price, but then shift to an integrative approach for payment terms, delivery, or service levels.
That's a really helpful distinction. So bringing it back to you, the listener, When do you use which approach? Well, generally you might lean towards a distributive strategy for, say, a one-off deal, where the ongoing relationship doesn't matter much. Maybe buying something from a private seller you'll never see again. But you absolutely want to aim for an integrative approach when you're looking to build or maintain a long-term relationship, or when there are multiple things on the table you can negotiate beyond just the price. If you think business partnerships, key supplier deals, employment situations, it really depends on what you value most in that specific interaction. Wow, what a deep dive that was. We've really covered a lot of ground today. From nailing down what negotiation actually is and why it's so incredibly important, to busting those common myths that can trip us up, and finally getting clear on the difference between those two core strategies, distributive and integrative. It's definitely not just theory, is it?
Not at all. It really drives home that negotiation is a skill, a fundamental, learnable skill. It's not some magic talent you're born with. And it's so vital for getting better results, yes, but also for building stronger, more positive relationships in every part of your life, not just at work. And the great thing is you can start putting these ideas into practice, well, right away.
Absolutely. So here's a final thought to leave you with as you go about your day. Just try to notice how deeply negotiation principles are woven into everyday life. It's not just happening in formal settings. Think about family chats about chores, or discussions in your local community group, even how you weigh options in your own head. How might actively applying some of these ideas, thinking about underlying interests, looking for win-win possibilities, always having a sense of your BATNA, how might that change the way those everyday interactions feel and the outcomes you get? Just think about it. You might be surprised.